The light shouldn't exist. That's the first thing my mind screamed at me. I'm Detective Marcus Chen, 22 years on the Philadelphia police force, and I've seen gunshot wounds, overdoses, fires that turned human beings into charcoal. I thought I'd seen everything death could offer. But the light pouring through that alley at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in November wasn't white or yellow or any color that has a name. It was moving like water and breathing like a living thing. And when it touched my partner Sarah's face, I watched her fall to her knees and start crying in a way that made my chest hurt. Sarah Reeves, my partner of 8 years. Tough as coffin nails, raised Baptist, but claimed she'd lost God somewhere between her third domestic violence call and her daughter's leukemia diagnosis. She hadn't prayed in 6 years. I know because she told me once, drunk on whiskey at my kitchen table, that she'd begged God to save her little girl, and he'd stayed silent. Emily died 3 months later. Sarah came back to work 2 weeks after the funeral, with eyes like stones. And now she was on her knees in a Philadelphia alley, hands stretched towards something I couldn't explain, sobbing the way people sob when something breaks open inside them. But to understand what heaven showed us that night, I need to take you back. Not to the beginning of my career, to the beginning of my slow death. My name is Marcus Chen, first-generation American. My parents came from Taiwan with a suitcase and a dream that their son would become a doctor or lawyer. I became a cop instead. My father didn't speak to me for 2 years. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I was serving a higher purpose, protection, justice, order. But after 2 decades of watching human beings destroy each other in every creative way imaginable, I stopped believing in higher purposes. I stopped believing in much of anything. Sarah was different. She'd believed once, hard and fierce, the way people believe when they grow up in churches, where everyone knows your name and prays over your scraped knees. She'd been a youth group leader. She'd led worship songs. And then Emily got sick, and all those prayers bounced off heaven's ceiling like rubber balls. We made a good team because we both knew the truth. This world is chaos dressed up in laws and procedures. There's no grand plan, no divine orchestrator. Just people trying not to drown. That's what I believed on the night everything shattered. It started like every other Tuesday swing shift. We were working Southeast Division, the graveyard tour from midnight to 8 a.m. The city gets strange after midnight. Not dangerous strange, though there's plenty of that. Strange in the way silence sounds too loud. Strange in the way streetlights make shadows look like they're breathing. We'd just cleared a domestic call on Tasker Street. Routine. The husband had slapped the wife. The wife refused to press charges. We filed the report, knowing we'd be back in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years when he'd graduated from slaps to fists to something worse. That's how it works. We're janitors mopping up blood. I drove. Sarah rode shotgun, staring out the window at the empty streets. "You ever think about quitting?" she asked. I glanced at her. Her face was reflected in the window glass, hollow and tired. "Every day." "But you don't." "No." "Why not?" I thought about it. Because if not us, who? Someone's got to show up when they call 911. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Noble. You believe that?" "I don't believe in much, but I believe in showing up." She was quiet for a long moment. Then there was a time I believed God showed up, that he heard prayers, that he gave a damn. I know. I was stupid. You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. Same thing. The radio crackled. Dispatch, bored and nasal. "Units in Southeast, we have a possible 10 to 52 at the corner of 5th and Bainbridge." Caller report screaming, "Anonymous tip." Units to respond. I reached for the radio. 24 David, we'll take it." Copy 24 David. Show you responding at 2:31. Sarah straightened. 10:52, ambulance call, screaming. That's vague as hell. Probably nothing. Probably a drunk couple fighting. Probably. But as I turned the car toward Bainbridge, something shifted. I can't explain it better than that. The air felt heavier. The streetlights seemed dimmer. The city, which had been its usual ugly self, suddenly felt like it was holding its breath. Sarah felt it too. I saw her hand move to her sidearm, checking it without thinking. "You feel that?" she whispered. "Yeah, what is it?" "I don't know. We pulled up to 5th and Bainbridge at 2:39 a.m., empty street. Row homes pressed together like teeth. No lights in any windows. No screaming. No people. Nothing. I killed the engine. The silence rushed in like water. Dispatch said screaming, Sarah said. I don't hear anything. Me neither. We sat there for 30 seconds. A full 30 seconds of absolute silence. No cars, no wind, no dogs barking. Philadelphia is never this quiet. Never. Then I heard it. Not screaming, singing. It was coming from the alley between two row homes. A narrow gap, maybe 4 feet wide, filled with shadows. But the singing was clear. A woman's voice, high and pure and singing words I didn't recognize. Not English, not Spanish, not any language I'd ever heard. Sarah's face had gone white. You hear that? Yeah, that's not normal. No, my hands were shaking. I didn't know why. I've walked into drug houses and active shooter scenes, and my hands never shook. But sitting in that patrol car, listening to that impossible singing, my hands trembled like a child's. We should call for backup, Sarah said. And tell them what? We hear singing? Marcus, something's wrong. I know. But I opened the car door anyway, because that's what we do. We show up. We walk toward the screaming or the gunshots or the singing that shouldn't exist. We walk toward it because someone has to. Sarah followed. We approached the alley side by side, flashlights up, hands near our weapons. The singing grew louder. It wasn't just one voice anymore. It was many voices, a choir, harmonies layering over each other like water over stones. At the mouth of the alley, I stopped. There was no one there. The alley was empty. Dumpsters, broken glass. A dead rat, no people, no source for the singing. But the voices were everywhere, coming from the walls, from the ground, from the air itself. Marcus. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Look up. I looked up. The sky was wrong. I don't mean cloudy or starless. I mean wrong. The darkness wasn't black. It was shifting, rippling like fabric in wind. And through the ripples I saw light. Not starlight, not moonlight. Light that moved with intention, with consciousness, pressing against the fabric of the sky like hands pushing through a curtain. What the hell? I breathed. The singing stopped. The silence that followed was so complete it hurt. Like the whole universe had inhaled and forgotten to breathe out. Then the light broke through. It poured into the alley like liquid gold, like honey made of fire, filling the space between the buildings, touching the dumpsters and the broken glass and the dead rat. And everything it touched started glowing. Not burning, glowing, like each object was remembering it had been made from light and was finally coming home. Sarah made a sound, half gasp, half sob. She dropped her flashlight. It clattered on the pavement, the beams swinging wild, and she fell to her knees. Marcus, she whispered. Marcus, do you see it? I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. The light was moving toward us. Not fast, slowly, deliberately, the way you'd approach a frightened animal. And I was frightened. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, to get back in the car, to radio for help, to do something, anything, except stand there and let this impossible light reach me. But I couldn't move. It touched Sarah first. The moment it made contact with her skin, she started crying. Not scared crying, something else. Something I'd never heard from her before. Relief, maybe. Or recognition. Like she'd been lost in a dark forest for 6 years and someone had finally called her name. I can see her, Sarah whispered. Marcus, I can see Emily. My heart stopped. Sarah, what are you talking about? She's right there. In the light. She's smiling. She's saying. Sarah's voice broke. She's saying it's okay. That she's okay. That she wants me to stop hurting. I looked into the light where Sarah was looking. I saw nothing. Just brightness. Just that impossible color that had no name. But Sarah saw her daughter. The light moved closer to me. I wanted to run. I wanted to pull my gun, which was insane because you can't shoot light. You can't arrest light. You can't do anything but stand there and let it come. When it touched my face, I felt warmth, not heat. Warmth like a hand on your forehead when you're sick. Warmth like being known. And then I heard the voice. It didn't come from outside. It came from inside my chest, inside my bones. A voice that was somehow my voice and not my voice, speaking words I'd never said. but always known. Marcus Chen, you have spent 22 years protecting people you believe have no protector. You have spent 22 years enforcing order you believe has no author. You have spent 22 years showing up because you believe no one else will. I tried to speak. My mouth wouldn't work. You were right about one thing. Someone had to show up. But you were wrong about who. The light grew brighter. I could see shapes in it now. Not clear shapes, impressions, wings maybe, or hands, or something my brain had no reference point for. Sarah was still on her knees beside me, crying and smiling at the same time, reaching towards something I couldn't see. Tonight, Marcus Chen, heaven showed up. Not because you called, not because you earned it, because mercy doesn't wait for invitations. My legs gave out. I hit the pavement hard, knees cracking against concrete, but I didn't feel pain. I felt held, like the air itself had arms. What do you want from me? I whispered. The voice that was inside me and everywhere spoke again. I want to show you what you've been protecting. I want to show you why order matters. I want to show you who's been showing up every time you showed up. The light intensified until I had to close my eyes. But closing my eyes didn't help. The light was inside my eyelids, inside my skull, inside every cell. And then I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, coming from inside the light. Someone was walking toward us. Someone with weight and presence and purpose. Sarah gasped. Marcus, do you see? I see it. A figure, tall, broad-shouldered, made entirely of that impossible light, but solid somehow, real. More real than the pavement under my knees or the badge on my chest. The figure stopped 3 feet in front of us and spoke, not with that internal voice, with a voice that moved air, a voice that had texture and timbre and authority that made my chest vibrate. Marcus, Sarah, I have something to tell you. I couldn't breathe. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. Beside me, Sarah had gone completely still. Her face tilted up toward the figure of light, tears streaming down her cheeks. The figure of light raised one hand, and the world cracked open. And then, with a clarity that cut through every doubt I'd ever had, the voice spoke. Not a sound exactly, more like truth being written directly onto my soul. Words that bypassed my ears and landed straight in the center of who I was. You think your identity separates you from me? I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The light around us pulsed with each word, like the entire universe was leaning in to make sure I understood. But that was never the barrier. I made you exactly as you are. Your identity isn't the problem. It never was. I felt my knees give out, except there was no ground beneath me to collapse onto. I was suspended in this impossible space, tears streaming down my face, and for the first time in years, they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of recognition, of being seen completely, fully, without the filter of what I thought I had to be. My partner stood beside me and I could see him trembling. His face was wet too. Whatever was happening to me was happening to him. We were both being held in this moment of absolute truth. The barriers you face, the voice continued, are pride, unforgiveness. The walls you've built to protect yourselves from being hurt again. Those are what separate you from the peace you're searching for. And suddenly I was seeing my life from the outside. Every moment I'd held on to resentment. Every time I'd chosen to be right instead of being reconciled. Every defensive wall I'd constructed brick by brick, telling myself I was protecting my heart when really I was building my own prison. I saw the co-worker I'd held a grudge against for 2 years over a stupid comment. The friend I'd cut off rather than have a difficult conversation. My own father, who I hadn't spoken to in months because pride wouldn't let me be the first to apologize. And the voice, impossibly gentle but firm, said, "Let it go. Forgive them. Forgive yourself. Do you want to be free?" I tried to speak but couldn't form words. My partner managed a broken yes. Then forgive. Choose forgiveness. That's the key I've been offering you all along. The light intensified, and suddenly we were seeing something else. I can only describe it as a glimpse of what was always meant to be. The version of my life without all those walls. The relationships healed. The freedom of carrying no grudges. The lightness of existing without constantly defending myself. I saw myself having coffee with my father, both of us laughing about something stupid. I saw reconciliation with that co-worker, an apology finally spoken after years of silence. I saw my own face, unguarded, peaceful, no longer carrying the weight of having to prove I was acceptable. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation. A door standing open that I'd walked past 1,000 times, always too proud or too hurt to step through. And then, as suddenly as it began, we were back. The rain, the patrol car, the empty street. The digital clock on the dashboard read 2:47 a.m. Only 3 minutes had passed. 3 minutes. My partner and I sat in complete silence, both of us staring straight ahead, trying to process what the hell just happened. "Did you," he finally whispered, his voice hoarse, "did you just see that?" Yeah, I did. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The light, the voice, everything. I wiped my face with my sleeve. My cheeks were wet. His were too. We sat there for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a few minutes. Neither of us moved. Neither of us reached for the radio or our phones or any of the normal anchors that would pull us back into regular reality. Because we both knew, without saying it out loud, that we couldn't pretend this didn't happen. We couldn't file this away as stress or exhaustion or some shared hallucination brought on by too many night shifts. This was real, the most real thing that had ever happened to either of us. "What do we do now?" my partner asked. And that was the question, wasn't it? What do you do when heaven steps into your patrol car and tells you that the thing you've been running from your entire life was never the problem? What do you do when you realize the walls you've been maintaining so carefully are the only things standing between you and freedom? I looked down at my hands. They weren't glowing anymore. The light was gone, but I could still feel it like an echo in my chest, a warmth that hadn't been there before. "I said slowly, I think we actually forgive people." Like he said, "I think we actually do it." My partner nodded. Yeah, I think we do." The next morning, before my shift ended, I called my father. I won't tell you it was easy. I won't tell you the words came naturally or that everything was instantly healed with one conversation. That's not how forgiveness works. That's not how any of this works. But I made the call. I said the words I'd been too proud to say for months. "I'm sorry. I want to try again." And he cried. And I cried. And it was awkward and difficult and one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. But I did it. My partner reached out to his ex-wife that same week. They'd been divorced for 3 years, hadn't spoken in 2. Not because there was still love there, but because there was still anger. Still hurt. Still a list of grievances neither of them would let go. He texted her, "I forgive you, and I'm sorry for my part. You deserve better from me." She didn't respond for 4 days. When she finally did, it was just 2 words, "Thank you." But those 2 words broke something open, something that had been locked for years. I'm not going to tell you we became perfect people overnight. I'm not going to tell you we never struggled with pride or unforgiveness again. That's not how transformation works. It's not a single moment. It's 1,000 small choices made over and over to walk through that open door instead of building new walls. But something shifted that night. Something fundamental. I stopped seeing my identity as something I had to defend. Stopped treating every interaction like a battle I had to win. Started asking myself in difficult moments, is this pride talking, or is this actually important? Most of the time it was pride. My partner changed careers 6 months later. Left law enforcement entirely. He'd always wanted to be a counselor, work with kids, but he'd convinced himself it was too late. Too impractical. Too vulnerable. After that night, vulnerable didn't scare him anymore. Me. I stayed in the department, but I transferred to community outreach. Started spending my shifts talking to people instead of just responding to emergencies. Started seeing my job as building bridges instead of enforcing boundaries. And here's the thing nobody tells you about divine intervention. It doesn't make life easier. It makes life more honest, more raw, more real. I still have hard days. Days when forgiveness feels impossible and pride feels safer. Days when I want to build those walls back up and hide behind them. But I can't. Not anymore. Because I've seen what's on the other side of those walls. I've felt what freedom actually feels like, and I can't unknow that. My partner and I don't talk about that night often. When we do, we keep it vague. We both know that if we tried to explain it to anyone else, we'd sound insane. Two cops having a shared mystical experience in a patrol car. Yeah, that's not going in any official report. But every few months, one of us will text the other, "Remember what he said?" And the other will respond, "Yeah, I remember." That's all it takes. That's the reminder we need when we're sliding back into old patterns. When unforgiveness starts feeling justified. When pride starts feeling like protection. Remember what he said. Your identity isn't the barrier. Your walls are. Let them go. Choose freedom. So here's what I need you to understand watching this. If heaven stepped in for two cynical cops who'd spent years building walls and justifying grudges, it can step in for you too. You are not too far gone. Your struggles, your identity, your past, none of it disqualifies you from this kind of encounter. None of it makes you unworthy of being seen fully and completely by a love that doesn't require you to be anything other than what you are. The barriers you're facing right now, the ones that feel insurmountable, they're not your identity. They're not who you are. They're the defense mechanisms you've built, and heaven is standing on the other side of them, waiting for you to realize you don't need them anymore. What would you do if heaven stepped into your life tonight? Not hypothetically, actually stepped in and showed you the open door you've been walking past your entire life. Would you walk through it? Or would you cling to the familiar walls because at least they're predictable? That's the question you're facing right now, whether you realize it or not. Not someday, not when you're ready. Right now, because heaven doesn't wait for you to be perfect before it intervenes. It intervenes to show you that perfection was never the requirement. Willingness is. Honesty is the courage to say, yes, I want to be free, even when you don't know what that freedom will cost you. My partner and I weren't special. We weren't particularly spiritual or enlightened or chosen. We were just two exhausted cops sitting in a patrol car, and heaven decided that was enough, that we were enough. You're enough too. Whatever you're carrying right now, whatever grudge or resentment or wall of pride you've been maintaining, heaven is offering you the same invitation it offered us. Let it go. Forgive. Be free. It won't be easy. I'm not promising easy. I'm promising real. I'm promising that on the other side of those walls is a version of yourself you've forgotten existed. The version that isn't constantly defending, constantly proving, constantly fighting. The version that's just alive, just free, just home. If this story resonated with something in you, if somewhere deep down you recognize that invitation, do me a favor, subscribe. Because there are more of these stories, more encounters, more moments when heaven broke through the ordinary and reminded someone that they were never alone, that they were always seen, that freedom was always available. Hit that like button if you've ever felt trapped behind your own walls. If you've ever carried unforgiveness so long, you forgot what it felt like to be light. If you've ever wondered if transformation is actually possible or just something other people get to experience. And comment below. Tell me, what would you forgive if you knew freedom was on the other side? Who would you reach out to if you knew heaven was holding the door open? Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been building walls for so long, they've forgotten they don't have to live behind them. Your miracle might be one decision away, one conversation, one choice to step through the door instead of reinforcing the walls. Heaven stepped in for us that night, in that patrol car, under that impossible light. It told us the truth we'd been running from. We were never unacceptable. We were just afraid. And it's waiting to tell you the same thing. The door is open. It's been open. The only question is whether you'll walk through it. Heaven stepped in for us that night. It's waiting to step in for you too.